what is it that makes one a quote-unquote true conservative? And what even is a conservative? Is it economic conservatism, social conservatism, a mixture of both, or neither? Is it possibly just a set of dogmas that are clung to without question, or even a litmus test? Because we've been told for a decade that the left is a monolith. It's a cult of blue hair and groupthink. But have you looked at the right lately? From where I'm sitting, it's starting to look like the exact same stadium, just with two different colored jerseys. It's the same team, just with home and away colors. The term conservative doesn't even mean you want to conserve your community, your family, or your currency anymore. It means you've signed a loyalty pledge. You've agreed to a certain dogma, and if you dare to step an inch outside the lines, the team doesn't just bench you, they try to end you. What are we even conserving anymore? If you're a fiscal conservative, you should be horrified by a leader and a movement that celebrates taxing allies into oblivion and sabotaging its own trade routes for a headline. And if you're a social conservative, you should be asking why the loudest voices in your movement have no interest in discussing the actual foundation of society, the family, or thy neighbor. The right is not purity spiraling right now, it's loyalty spiraling. It's not about being right or demonstrating principles. It's about being on the team and proving you're on the team. In 2016, the team was never Trump because of a set of principles they claimed to have. And today, those same never Trumpers are always Trumpers for the exact same reason. It's not principles, but access. It's the seat at the table that comes with the price tag. It's the exclusive interview or the exclusive coverage that is only granted if you promise not to talk about the grocery bill or the jet-setting scandals. Access is profit. Access is the algorithm-boosting retweet from the top of the ticket. It's a cycle of a sort of mutual deification where the pundits have turned the politicians into saints and the politicians have turned the pundits into the only truth tellers. It's a closed loop of benefit where hypocrisy is rebranded as strategy and the double standard is just defeating the Dems. They've realized that you don't need to be coherent if you're loud, and you don't need to be right if you're loyal. They've adopted the very liberal playbook they've spent years mocking. Bend the truth to fit the dogma, and then excommunicate anyone who remembers what the truth used to look like. It's that curious habit of dismissing a crisis until it's profitable to acknowledge it. We see it everywhere in the 2026 postmortem, especially on the right. Remember when questions about COVID mandates or vaccine data were conspiracy theories, even on the right, until the quiet admissions started rolling in? Or remember that specific election that nobody wanted to talk about until 2000 Mules came out? Or how discussions about a growing trend of trans-identified youth were hand-waved as small fish back in 2015, only for the same pundits, those same pundits, to now act like they discovered the issue yesterday. That happened, by the way. They did it with race politics too, by clinging to this colorblind trope until they actually looked more ignorant than they did poised. And they're still doing it with crime statistics. They're ignoring the patterns of rot in our cities unless they can use it as a weapon against the boogeyman of the week. And they're still not accurate about it. They wait for the truth to become mainstream, then they walk out in front of the parade and act like they've been leading it all along. It's not leadership, it's just reading the room after the lights have already been turned on and having the most money for the loudest microphone. It's why there's absolutely no originality in the topics they cover, and why their takes are only ever halfway there. They're sporadic and inconsistent. And if you don't believe me, go look for yourself. They tell us they're modern free speech absolutists, trailblazing the First Amendment. They rail against the wrong-think censorship of the Biden administration. But watch what happens the moment the conversation shifts to specific geopolitical interests. I mean, suddenly the absolutism completely vanishes. We then see a movement that demands the government step in to silence critics, punish dissenters, and cancel anyone who doesn't follow the prescribed script. Does that sound familiar? You cannot claim to be a champion of the First Amendment while simultaneously calling for the chopping block the moment someone uses that speech to question a narrative that you find inconvenient. And if you believe in the constitutional freedom of speech and expression, then you shouldn't blame anyone for exercising it in any direction. It isn't a principle if it only applies to people who agree with you. It's just a PR campaign at that point. Now, this loyalty spiral was never more apparent than in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination. For years, we were told that the FBI was a rotted, deep state institution that needed to be dismantled and rebuilt from the studs. Remember that? But the moment the investigation was handed to their guy, the skepticism completely evaporated. We saw a massive divide open up, those who swallowed the official report whole cloth, and those who dared to ask why the math wasn't adding up, something we're told that's inherent in the right. But yet, if you questioned the gaps in the timeline or the inconsistencies in the forensics, you weren't just a skeptic. You were a fringe conspiracy theorist and an enemy of the movement. If your platform is built on poking holes in narratives, then you can't be upset when one does that, even if they seem redundant and irrelevant to you. And you can't claim the system is rotted only when the other guy is holding the scalpel. When you suddenly decide that the agencies can do no wrong and your fellow conservatives can do no right because one's saying what you want to hear and one isn't, you aren't a patriot, you're a sycophant. And this should have been made obvious to anyone who was paying attention to the manufactured narrative following Charlie's death. How quickly your favorite true conservatives accepted the official report and moved on, and then eventually ate their own for wrongthink. I mean, it's pretty ironic. What's also ironic is how they love to use the term social conservative as this badge of honor. But let's look at what they're actually conserving. Real social conservatism isn't just about being anti-woke, you know. It's about the preservation of the family as the sovereign foundation of society. It's about the belief that a father and a mother should be able to raise their children without the state or the market forcing them into a state of permanent survival and dependence, arrested socioeconomic status. But the pundits with the loudest microphones are telling you that individual liberty is the only metric that matters, while a family of 6 is staring at a $2,000 grocery bill on a $4,000 income. They rail against socialized medicine from the comfort of their private coverage, while the average family is one ER visit away from bankruptcy. I'm in Canada, where the reserved headline says our healthcare is a national treasure, yet I was just charged $15 for a piece of paper, a record. Now, it sounds like a small fee, but it's a massive symptom. It's the commodification of the neighbor. It's where everything is a transaction and nothing is a duty. And yet I felt lucky to be Canadian in that moment. I mean, at least I have a doctor, right? The American conservative solution to healthcare is make more money. They paywall their revolutions and they exchange merit for the highest bidder. I mean, just look at your X feed or Rumble. They use homelessness as a prop to own the libs, but never actually look at the person sleeping on the sidewalk. They're completely ignorant to the common struggle because they're unaffected by it. They don't know the pain and strife of trying to buy a home that's been priced into the stratosphere by the very free market they worship. They're unaffected by the drip of inflation because they're the ones selling the umbrellas to you. They aren't conserving our values, and they don't care that your values are unattainable now. They're just managing our decline while charging us a subscription fee to watch it happen. It's time we addressed the disconnect between the pulpit and the pew. We are told to look to these figures as the vanguard of a movement, but how can they lead a people they don't actually live among? Some of your favorite talking heads have more money than they could spend in a lifetime, which, frankly, also makes the common accusation of grifting moot, so stop using it. If we're going to discuss grifting, then let's discuss those who've taken the safest, widest path on every major socio-political issue of the last decade, and still have a multi-million-dollar brand to prove it. And while the millionaires on your screen rewrite your nation's religious history and whitewash their own faith under the convenient banner of Judeo-Christian values to satisfy a geopolitical loyalty oath and a brand, the people they claim to fight for are falling through the cracks. We need to be honest about this, and we need to be honest about some of their accusations, the ones where they claim that certain voices are extreme and fringe. I mean, remember when fringe minority was badge of honor? And then they tell you that they're dangerous to the status quo. They're dangerous to conservatism, but it's just a gatekeep to keep you focused on them. Proof? Some of the most extreme voices they point to actually have zero drive to preserve the institutions of old and don't even pretend to. They reject the family unit and they mock the sanctity of marriage. Most are single, childless, and live questionable lifestyles that are anything but conservative by any traditional definition of the word. But apparently, watch out for them. The truth is, neither are building a future or leading by example. They're just performing a role for the camera, except one has subscribed to the agreed upon script and the other one hasn't. It has nothing to do with actions and behavior, but words and opinions. You can be a technocratic zoomer with MGTOW proclivities, but don't you dare talk about X, Y, and Z. But the modern right has ceased to be a movement of ideas or convictions lately anyway. It's become nothing more than a reactionary reflex. They aren't paving their own path or solving the actual problems facing the floorboards of the nation. Instead, they've literally become default anti-leftism. That's what they've settled on. If the left says A, the right feels a Pavlovian need to scream B, even if B is a lie, a distraction, or a contradiction of what they believed 5 minutes ago. There is no self-reflection and no accountability, only a race to get to the top of your X feed and be the loudest voice in the opposition. Take the war in Gaza, or the recent State of the Union, or tariffs as but examples. Do you need more? How about Elon Musk, the ICE raids, or the sudden blind worship of federal law enforcement the moment the badge is pinned on their guy? Or how about Iran? I don't need to read the headlines or see the clips. I already know where most will stand on the issue, and it'll become just another fracture within the movement. Just another issue to flex how pure they are while eating their own and dividing their own. It's such a valuable waste of time and effort, but it's a reactionary effort, just as I said it is. And the loyalty pledge doesn't allow for those kinds of fractures to be discussed honestly. It only allows them to be buried under the next great spectacle, like Charlie Kirk's memorial at State Farm Arena in September 2025, which effectively became a stadium rally for Trump and Republicans, complete with a 60,000-seat light show and mini fireworks as if we were celebrating a touchdown. We watched Erica Kirk as she was ushered into the staged, managed embrace with Trump, while America the Beautiful blared over the speakers like a victory lap. Are you serious? The grief may have been real, but the environment sure wasn't. It was manufactured. They weren't mourning Charlie, they were harvesting him. They turned a tragedy into a revival to distract from the fact that under their own Back the Blue leadership, the investigation was a total disaster from hour one. Now imagine for a second if that had happened in 2022. Imagine the investigations, the deep dives, the subpoenas, all the deep state monologues. If a conservative leader was assassinated and a Democrat FBI director was caught absolutely fumbling the case and joyriding in bureau jets while the crime scene went cold, it would have been headlines for weeks. They'd actually still be talking about it today while clutching their pearls. But because it's our guy at the helm, the right has developed a sudden, convenient case of cheek turning. It's vanity and apathy masquerading as strength. They're the types who'd rather mock a green initiative than build a conservative model for land stewardship that actually protects the farmer from the corporation. If anything, they'd protect the corporation. It's hollow, it's performative, it's a script, and it's written by the very enemies they claim to be fighting. And in 2026, when we need actual architects, the professional reactionary isn't just lazy. It's dangerous. Not convinced? Well, then I dare you to take a close look around. Point to me anyone who's making an effort to bridge divides or build a community. How can they build a community when individual liberties are valued above all else, even to your neighbor's detriment? There's so much noise and there's not much solution. There's a lot of scapegoating and there's not much cohesion. And there's surely a missed opportunity for self-reflection because it's buried underneath the moral grandstanding and gaslighting by those who've exchanged their standards for clout and clicks. We've been sold a version of patriotism that has been stripped of its substance, replaced with a scoreboard, and we've been told that as long as our team is winning the news cycle, that we're winning the war. But if your victory involves hand-waving the poverty of your neighbor, or ignoring the rot in your own institutions and trading your principles for a seat at the table, then you haven't won anything. You've just been recruited. As a reminder, the right was unified in its anti-war stance re Russia versus Ukraine. Yet now, that same principle has only been reserved for the so-called fringe. You know, those extremists you're told aren't true or honest or pure. Are you starting to see the picture yet? This isn't about purity, it's about loyalty. But we don't need another loyalty program. We need a conscience. We need solidarity and unity. We need to stop worrying about the name on the back of the jersey and start worrying about the neighbor that we've made a stranger. We need to stop judging based on words and start judging based on actions. Because at the end of the day, if you're just a mirror of the people you claim to hate, then you've already lost the war. You're just another cult selling a different flavored Kool-Aid.